WBNE.
Hello, and welcome to episode 95, all about The Hobbit, Chapter 8, Flies and Spiders, being the 95th part of That's What I'm Tolkien About. Hello, my name is Mary Clay. If that's too complicated for you, just call me MC. And today I'm joined by my gal pals of the restricted section, Brooke, Christina, and Haley. Except psych, this is part 2, so they won't be introducing themselves. If you missed part 1, go back and listen to that, and then come back and listen to part 2 of this episode, which will begin now. Have fun! So they all left the path and plunged into the forest together.
You had
that's when,
one job.
One job. That's what I wrote down in my notes. It's just you had one job.
Here's what I would have done. Okay, we know they have rope because they've used it, right? Or did it all float away? I think they have some more rope, right? I mean, among the 14 of them, you must have rope.
You go on a quest, you bring rope, right?
Yeah. So what I would have done probably is do a what's it called? Like a human chain, out.
Yeah.
Using the rope to distance yourself as far as you can, just to see how far you can see, and then reevaluate with new information. I never would have been let's all just forget this entire, let's just go get lost. Let's just go. Let's all go. Leave no one behind. We're just all abandoning the only direction we had. That would never be my option.
That's not the way to go. Yeah.
Would you guys... I asked this when we were covering the Follow the Spiders episode of the restricted section. Would y'all have left the path, or would you have ignored the light? If you were by yourself, say, or would you have ignored the light and carried on?
If I was by myself and 1, a wizard, and 2, an ancient bear man told me do not leave the path multiple times, I would not have left the path. Ever. Despite
what many people, I think, would assume, I am capable of screaming at a shocking volume. So I would have just stood there and hit the highest pitch that I can until someone came for me.
Just all the birds are what?
I think if I was alone and I was oh man, I'm out of food and I've come pretty far, I would just be I guess I'm gonna take the rest of this at a light jog. I'm just gonna move faster than a group of people this large would move.
On the path,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, on the path.
Yeah.
For sure.
I
Especially
agree.
Look, I know as a reader that this is elf magic because it's just so blatantly obvious.
Yeah.
But it's definitely... It's some sort of magic. What it's definitely not is a perfectly normal dinner party in a haunted woods.
Yeah. Just your casual dinner party in haunted woods.
I mean,
I
for
automatically,
the Instagram,
I automatically assume that's a trick.
They have charcuterie.
Sure. Well, and I did this thing in my brain where I get elves and the fae confused, because there's a lot of lore crossover, especially in this kind of situation. This is big fae vibes.
Yeah,
and it's
wood elves are very fae.
Yeah, and the number one, there's 2 rules of meeting the fae. Do not drink the food. Do not dance to their music.
Don't drink the food.
Yeah, don't eat the food. Don't drink the anything. Don't dance to the music. Because then you're screwed. You're just there forever now.
Yeah.
What are fae?
Oh, the fairies.
In the traditional sense.
Yeah, traditional fairies of the English and Irish
yeah, not
lores.
Tinkerbell, but the kind that will murder for you.
Don't refer to them directly. Call
it.
them the gentry or the good neighbors. Otherwise, they're gonna hear you and mess with your life. Never step in a mushroom ring, because if you come out, it'll be 1,000 years later, and the world will have moved on without you.
You know what?
Your kid may or may not have been swapped with a demon baby because we think that's fun.
Sounds like they're a real treat.
That escalated quickly.
Sounds like they're... I will say, if I was in a group, though, and we were on the path and we saw this light, I would never say, let's all leave the path. I would suggest something like Christina said, with a human chain.
Or send a scout.
I would leave a couple people on the path.
Yeah, send a scout, and you must stay within shouting distance,
Yeah, if you have this huge group of 13, 14, I don't know numbers
it's 14
anymore with this book.
It's 14.
Where you have this huge group of people, leave, 2 or 3 people on the path and then walk a couple feet, and then you leave another 2 or 3 people and then walk a little bit further, you know, and then just tell everyone to stay put.
Like scientifically approach this.
And then like eventually you get to a point where like the last group can see like, oh, hey, it's like a fairy or elves or whatever.
Yeah.
Let's go see what's happening. They go see what's happening and they're like, oh, there's, you know, nothing for us to do here. And then you shout back to the next group, and then you just like work your way back.
Yeah,
like, that's how I would do it.
That's kind of like the
but-
thing with these woods, though, is that like they know their magic, but they don't know the rules of that magic. So like even back with the boat and the river, which they were told like don't touch it, don't drink from it, don't swim in it, don't do anything. Like Feely missed his first throw and then had to pull the rope back and was like scared to touch the wet rope.
Yeah, they weren't sure.
Yeah,
Like they
about even
just
touching
don't know
it.
the rules.
Okay, wait, I have another idea for what I would do if in this moment. So I would probably send Killy and Philly, our 2 youngest, strongest, and sexiest dwarves, and I would probably tell them to like jog for a day or like walk as fast as they can for a day, literally for like a day, and because they've been in here for it's been like a couple
Oh,
weeks.
send them ahead on the
Yes,
path?
yes. I'm so sorry. Send them ahead on the path for. There's a big motorcycle. Yes, send them ahead on the path for a day, and if you don't hit the outside by then, come back. And like that gives us 2 days to like, I don't know, camp or like walk slowly, whatever. And like if you come back and you still haven't like hit the edge of it, then we'll start to think about alternative plans.
Yeah, I like that plan. So they do none of those
Yeah,
things.
yeah, absolutely not. They do
they
so what we've
all-
decided is a worst case scenario. Like
Yeah, so they all leave the path and they creep towards this feast of what they see. There's like lots of amazing food, and there's this like, I'm just imagining honestly just like a grand old like really fun forest feast.
Yeah.
And the elves are having a good time. Kind of like, okay, so in the beginning of the Crucible,
oh my god. Wait, that's one of
The
my
way-
favorite plays for some reason.
the way that like the girls like all start getting into trouble is because they were found in the woods like dancing by a fire, which honestly they were probably just having a good time, you know,
Real hot witch
and
stuff.
then everyone else in the village was like witchcraft because women are enjoying themselves.
How dare they?
So I'm kind of just imagining like there's bonfires, there's, I don't know, tiki torches. There's, you know, just tons of, everyone has like a flower crown of some kind on, very like cottage core.
This is a music
woodsy
festival. It's a
vibes.
music festival.
Yes, it's Coachella.
Oh my god, wait, I literally, Haley was like, where have I been to this before? And, okay, I'm so sorry for everyone except for Haley and every single person listening, but Haley and I have gone to this music festival a couple times before where every single year they set up a mad tea party in the woods under like lights like sprinkling down from the trees. And
That sounds so fun.
Oh my
So,
god,
like-
it's so fun.
So, like, the dwarves come out, like, just wanting food, and the elves like, the fire goes out, and, like, the elves just scatter, and all I can think is, like, they're
So-
all on shrooms, like, oh god, it's the cops!
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so also here they make a poor decision where instead of just being like, hey, let's go like send one person to ask a question,
Yeah.
they just go like charging out in the middle of this
Which,
circle.
like, I would probably run too. I don't know you.
They're not thinking clearly at this point.
Wait,
'cause
just
they're also
to
hungry.
clarify, I would probably run away from stampeding dwarves too.
Yes, I would too.
I honestly have a question about this because, like, how do the elves, like, pack up and get gone so quickly?
Yeah, so what I'm picturing happening right here is they all walk out into this, you know, the middle of this feast, and then there's like a beat of silence where everyone looks at them, and then there's like a poof of smoke and everything is dark and they're all just gone and vanished. And I can only explain this as being like elf magic.
But, like, elf magic largely in this series, and, like, correct me if I'm wrong, does not work like that.
It's
Like,
not like
they
wizard
can't
magic.
teleport.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening here.
No, they
I
really...
had
I think they really just, like, someone kicks the fire out and they all just bolt.
just run.
I had a sillier explanation.
Okay.
Because it's not just the elves that go away, it's also, like, their table, instruments, and their food.
Yeah, everything
Right.
disappears.
I was assuming that they had mayhaps had everything on like ropes, and so they just like kick the fire out and then just like get zooped up into the trees.
Oh my god. Well, I do think that, I mean, okay, so if you're listening, you probably have read this chapter, but if not, spoilers for the next like 6 paragraphs. But this happens like several times, and I think one of the later times Bilbo gets like caught in like elves also like running all around him. So like it's like the dwarves and elves in the darkness, just chaos, like running all around him. And so like I do kind of picture that it's like a picnic. You could like scoop up a picnic in a panic, you know?
Like this definitely sounds like there's no table. They're literally just sitting on stumps in a circle.
Such a delightful
Yeah, no,
vibe
it sounds
going
like
on.
a great time. So this is just a bonfire party. Like you can flee a bonfire party in pretty short order.
Especially if you don't have like beer bottles, you know.
But like every party they interrupt is like
clinking
every party they interrupt is like progressively more advanced, and the elves are getting like progressively madder and madder about it.
Yeah.
So that's what I love about so they disappear, and then the lights are like, they reappear in the distance, and so the dwarves keep following them. And what I just love, it just makes me laugh so much. Just because, again, the way the elves are in the books are just so different from how they are in the movies. And I find them so much more amusing in the books. And so I just like this idea that the elves are just like, leave us alone. And they just keep running away.
Yeah.
They're like, you were not invited. I don't know how we can make this more clear that you were not invited.
This is us being polite.
Yeah, so they keep disappearing. The feast, yes, as I think Haley said, yeah, the feasts keep getting more and more elaborate as they go. And then eventually every time the lights go out and they're like re-engulfed in darkness, they have like a harder time regrouping. And then eventually it gets to a point where they've all been scattered and separated.
Wait, I would like to just real quick pause. When the dwarves / Bilbo have been like leaping into the firelight or whatever, I think whoever like triggers the elven reaction like gets knocked out, because they find Bilbo on the ground and he's like the way they say it is fast asleep, like not knocked unconscious, but like fast asleep.
Yeah, because it mentioned at one point when I should say every time like the lights go out, they like sit down and they're like, well, I guess we'll like go to sleep here. And it mentions that like Bilbo is so tired that he doesn't even care anymore that he's hungry. So he's very sleepy. He's a sleepy boy. And then whoever is like on guard that night like is like, oh my God, the lights appeared, and then they go after them.
Yeah.
So I don't know what happened here, because it says they were just giving up hope when Dory stumbled across him by sheer luck. In the dark, he fell over what he thought was a log. and he's asleep. Yeah.
Well, because they sent like, man, I vibe with this, because like they see the lights again and Thorin's like, okay, we don't rush out this time. Like that was a bad move. So I'm just going to send Mr. Baggins first because he's like the least intimidating of us. Like I have definitely,
and Bilbo's like,
I have definitely been like selected as the least intimidating person to do a task.
Yeah, I've never been selected as that person.
Oh, certainly me neither. So they I just also like that, like when Bilbo wakes up from his like little snooze, he says, I was having such a lovely dream all about having a most gorgeous dinner. And it's like, that's exactly what like Bomber said when he woke up. Like they're just dreaming of food. And everyone else is like, could you literally stop talking about food?
Is that just like whatever elf spell this is? Whatever they're drugging the water with?
I don't know. It has to be some kind of, I don't know. Yeah, magic. Who knows? Maybe they really are just that hungry.
Yeah, maybe it's just to like soothe you so you don't feel like waking up. You know, it's like part of the sleep magic.
Yeah.
That's very, like, I feel like that's kind of how elves would operate.
Yeah. Just like gently lull you into becoming, I don't even know, just like alone in the woods.
So eventually they all get totally separated.
Which is so annoying because they just run away from each other.
Yeah, they're just like, it shouldn't be that hard to be like, you know, Dory, and then, because it mentions that, like, they're all running around shouting for each other, and they can't find each other somehow.
Also, it's just, like, if the four of us were in this situation, right, the four of us were friends, I would, as probably even before the lights went out, since this has already happened to us 6 times, I would just grab you. Like, I would just be holding
grab
you.
someone's hand.
But also,
Just be
it's
like, okay, I found you, Christina. Let's go find Brooke.
I
and
found
Haley.
you!
it just went dark. Like, no one got rearranged. Like, everyone was where they were.
Just screams
It's like,
and
okay,
runs.
someone, this is what, it was the part of the end of Fellowship. I had Adol Rafai on for that part, and he pointed out how when Frodo, when Frodo puts the ring on, when he and Boromir are having that fight, Boromir is on top of Frodo, like pinning him to the ground or whatever, is holding on to him, and then Frodo puts the ring on and disappears, and suddenly Boromir's like, what? Where did he go? The invisibility did nothing to
you're grasping him,
transport him, you know?
Yeah, no, like the shenanigans of them all getting lost is a very Scooby-Doo feel to it.
All of this, you know what? All of this does feel very Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, like every time I picture like all of them running, I hear that bongos noise.
Yeah.
which
Like they're opening multiple doors and coming out of different doors.
so silly, just so silly. Like it just seems like almost they're trying to get lost. They're like, let's run in circles.
They're not very good about this. I say it a lot with a lot of characters, and I think it's true now with this group of people. There's a reason they're not in Ravenclaw.
Not a damn one of them.
Maybe if I knew more about the individual personalities of the dwarves, I could maybe be like, oh, okay, I see how that one could be in Ravenclaw. But at this point, collectively, none of them are in Ravenclaw.
Yeah.
An argument could be made for Balin, but he's the only one.
So Bilbo is like, well, this sucks, and he sits down and goes to sleep.
This could be any chapter of Bilbo just like,
Honestly,
well, this sucks.
It happens a lot. It literally says that was one of his most miserable moments.
Which that's saying something.
So he leans up against a tree and goes to sleep. And then when he wakes up, he feels that there's a spider wrapping him in the, what's it called? Not string.
Webbing.
Silk.
Web. String.
Web is the word, yes. And he's like, a spider. And I just remembered, sorry. From the Amanda show, the Totally Kyle skit, there's one where it's like,
spider fell on my face, and I was all, spider! And the spider was all, Kyle!
and as Drake Bell is doing this skit, he's laughing. Because he's
like
14 or 15 years old at that point, and it's just such a dumb joke that he's just laughing. And the producers were like, we won't reshoot that.
These spiders are very, they are relatives of Shelob, who's actually terrifying. These spiders are idiots.
Yeah. So these spiders, so he takes his sword out and cuts himself loose. And I noticed, I noted the use of this word, and then I was like, oh, that's cute, kind of like his sword. And then later on it happens. So it says, the spider evidently was not used to things that carried such stings at their sides. And I'm like, oh, that's so cute. It thinks that Bilbo's sword is a little stinger. That's so cute. And so Bilbo cuts himself away. And I love, this is a great moment where I was like, oh, Bilbo, our boy's growing up.
Yeah.
Somehow the killing of the, and so he kills the spider. Somehow the killing of the giant spider all alone by himself in the dark, without the help of the wizard or the dwarves or of anyone else, made a great difference to Mr. Baggins. He felt a different person and much fiercer and bolder in spite of an empty stomach as he wiped his sword on the grass and put it back into its sheath. I will give you a name, he said to it. I shall call you Sting.
I love it.
I love it.
I love all of it. Yeah, it's all great.
And also, not to be this way, but quick herbology moment, there would never be grass in this forest.
How do you know? It's a magic forest.
I mean, definitely not grass that uses photosynthesis, okay?
That's true. That is true. But yeah, great character, huge character growth moment for Bilbo. And I love that he's just so proud of himself.
Yeah, he deserves it. And Nope, he deserves it. That's the end of it.
And then he also names his sword Sting.
So
It's
cute.
so cute.
It's like this. Sorry, I just always bring up Game of Thrones. I'm sorry. There's swords there. This Bilbo's sting reminds me of Arya's needle, right? It's like fierce and little to match the wielder.
And so Bilbo, he also does take a moment to say, "Oh, why did we not remember Bjorn's advice and Gandalf's? What a mess we are in now."
They did remember it. They just were like, "We're gonna opt out of it."
That is
you
true.
all consciously made the decision
decided to ignore
together. Mutually, you consented to step off the
There are
path.
14 people in this group, and not one of them was like, maybe we should listen to the only thing this magic bear man told us.
Get it together.
Bilbo's like, all right, he's having like a huge, honestly, it's very reminiscent for me of Sam at the end of Two Towers book. When Sam is like, Frodo's dead. It's all on me now. And he becomes he's like, it's time for me to step up and take charge. And he's like, I'm going on an adventure and a mission.
He's like,
we're going to do this thing.
He's like, let me just throw Frodo's body over the side of this cliff.
Yeah. And then unfortunately for Sam, like it goes wrong, like literally 5 minutes later when he's like, oh, Frodo wasn't dead. But Bilbo gets this like renewed sense of like strength and energy and confidence. And he's like, I'm going to go look for everyone else. And it mentions that he's being very stealthy and quiet. And the narrator's like, I've told you before that hobbits are very clever and quiet and stealthy. And then it also says like, oh, and also Bilbo put the ring on. And so I love that it's like he was being very stealthy because hobbits are very stealthy. I mean, he also was invisible because he put a ring on, but you know.
I think that goes back to Haley's earlier point, though, about the narrator perhaps being Bilbo in this instance, because it's like the narrator immediately is like, well, it's because he's clever and he's a hobbit and hobbits are great. And, you know, side note,
he also had this magic ring.
I've got a little bit of an assist.
Yeah. I just like, it works out so well for Tolkien that he was like, you know what? Instead of me writing The Hobbit, it was actually Bilbo. You know, it was something that like he decided much later on. And I think it works out really well for him and in the way that a lot of things J.K. Rowling has said after the fact did not, check out.
Like what Tolkien did with The Hobbit was like actually an ingenious retcon, because the originally published version, like the Riddles in the Dark thing, was not as dramatic or involved. It was literally just, oh, and then Bilbo won this riddle contest and then he had the ring and everything was fine, and the ring was literally just a ring that makes you invisible. It wasn't special. And then he decided that the ring is actually like
the source
like
of all
the nexus
evil.
of all evil. Yeah. So like in Fellowship, when Gandalf is explaining things to Frodo, he's like, yeah, that's that version of the story that Bilbo originally told all of us kind of didn't jive with me. I kind of didn't believe a word of it. So I like, it really strained our friendship because I was very insistent on getting the actual story out of him. And I thought it was really weird how like it had worked on his mind that he just wanted like his claim to this ring to feel as legitimate as possible, that he came up with this completely unnecessary lie. And like eventually he edited The Hobbit so that the actual story of Bilbo getting the ring was more in line with the trilogy, but like that retcon, the way that he worked that was absolutely ingenious.
It's almost like he's like good at writing.
I know, right? Right?
At least like 80% of the time.
I mean, it's just such a rare gift to read a book. I want to say these days, but there are modern writers that do this well as well.
Yeah.
But like, it's such a rare gift to read just a truly talented writer. You know what I mean? And like, and to see the way that Tolkien is handling this story and to note how different it is from his other works. Like, this is him taking a stab at a children's book. And he handles that genre shift, I think, incredibly well.
So Bilbo, with Sting at his side and the ring on his finger, goes off in search of He always refers to them as his friends, but the way that the dwarves treat him, I'm like, Bilbo, they're not your friends.
Yeah. You're like their slave. You're not even getting
They're
paid.
so mean to him.
I
They're
just
so
don't
mean to
think
him.
Bilbo has other friends.
Aww.
Like, I think these are his first friends.
He's like, oh, this is what friendship is. People show up at your house and demand food and drink from you, and then they kidnap you and take you on an adventure, and then they're mean to you the whole time.
Okay, not saying I've never
That's what
done that with a
friendship
friend. Like, okay, like every friendship is different.
Haley's raising her hand.
We've gone on so many adventures together.
But that's also surrounded by a lot of kindness and other fun moments.
Yes, you're
whereas the
very
dwarves
right.
are pretty much just mean to Bilbo all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is very much the of the group.
So he finds that the dwarves have all been taken by this group of spiders who are standing around talking, and they the dwarves are all like spun up in little cocoons, like hanging in the trees, and the spiders are like, oh, they're gonna be nice and juicy and tasty. Yes, Haley?
I have a question for the group, because I don't think this is explicitly outlined anywhere in the text. Do we think that Bilbo can understand the spiders because he's wearing the ring?
Well, because they're
so-
probably not speaking the common
See,
tongue.
this is another thing where I'm like, I think this works out very conveniently for Tolkien after the fact. And I don't think when he was writing this scene, that he was like, oh, well, Bilbo can understand these spiders and their language and their hisses or whatever because he has this ring on. He was just like, well, you know, they're spiders. And then his son was like, well, what were they saying? And Tolkien's like, good question. They were talking about eating them and whether or not they're dead yet. And so Tolkien in the moment was probably like, yeah, they were just spiders and they were talking, you know.
Yeah.
But I think that also checks out given what we know later on with Lord of the Rings. I think it checks out that he could understand them with the ring on.
What's the spider equivalent of being a parcel mouth?
Or arachnid?
Ew, I hate
Ew.
that. Okay, wow. Let's move on. Yep, no, I regret everything.
So the spiders are all talking about whether or not the dwarves are dead, if they should kill them and eat them, if they should kill them and wait a bit and then eat them. And they're like, oh, this one's alive still. And they're like poking around at Bomber. Bilbo is like, okay, I have to act fast because otherwise Bomber is going to be eaten. Again, poor Bomber.
He's having a rough
The
time.
spiders are fat shaming him too because they're like, oh, this one's like big and juicy. And he's like, excuse me, I've had a rough day. And so Bilbo starts throwing rocks at them.
Such a Hobbit move.
This is, I was going to say an established like weapon of choice for the Hobbit race people. Yeah. It also, then the narrator again kind of like goes on a tangent of like, Bilbo could do all sorts of cool things. He was very good at dart throwing and shooting at the wand. What does that mean? I know we're all thinking something dirty.
Is it maybe like horseshoes?
It sounds a bit like it might be like an early version of cricket. Like there's just a stick in the ground and like you throw stuff at the stick.
Okay, Haley, you just described horseshoes.
Well, so then it says, okay, so it says dart throwing, comma, shooting at the wand, comma, bowls.
I imagine that like
That-
So
like
bowls
quarters.
is just,
No, bowls is like the little, you know, the game where you've got like the little ball and you're trying to roll balls as close to that ball.
Bocce ball?
Yeah, like bocce ball. It's called boule
Okay.
in French.
Oh,
French.
so
So,
that's
I
almost
assumed
okay.
that was, yeah.
I was about to joke list bocce ball, but it was actually on the list.
and then it says 9 pins. I'm assuming that's what we know is
Bowling,
bowling.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got, I don't know about you guys' copies, because I've got kind of like an old-timey
Tell us,
version.
Hanny. Oh, I have the same one.
Mine mentions...
Quoits. Quoits.
yeah, quoits. Quats,
I
quoits.
skipped that because I didn't know what it was or how to say it. Thank you for calling me out on this, Haley.
I don't know what it is.
I don't know
It
what
looks French, so I'm going to hazard a
Someone
guess
Google
that
it.
it's pronounced qua.
Kua? No,
Are you sure
that's
you even
the
pronounced
drink.
the Q?
That's the drink.
I mean, you said don't Google it?
No, Google it if someone wants to Google it.
Oh, it's horseshoes, but with rings instead of a horseshoe.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
well then.
And he's also good at blowing smoke rings and asking riddles and cooking that I haven't had time to tell you about. There is no time now. And so I love how the narrator's like, he's really good at all of these things. Again, the brilliantness of like how it worked out that like after the fact, we know that this is Bilbo. So I just love the idea that Bilbo is using this moment to brag about his
he's being kind of passive aggressive. Like, I actually know how to do other stuff besides the 4 things I've done besides faint.
I know the dwarves so far in this story have treated me like a burden, and I can't do anything, and I'm useless, and I'm always a screw up. But like, I'm actually good at a lot of stuff. I can bowl really good. I'm really good at horseshoes. I'm really good at blowing smoke rings. Thank you very much, Gandalf. But there's no time to talk about that right now. And so this was where like I really loved the playfulness of this omniscient.
No, you crushed it. No, that's exactly right.
Narrator. He starts distracting the spiders by like running around and singing. He's just making up this song, making fun of the spiders, calling them Tom, Noddy, and Addercop. And then it's another like funny quip from the narrator after the song says, "Not very good perhaps, but then you must remember that he had to make it up himself on the spur of a very awkward moment." I like how it says awkward moment.
Yeah.
That's such a British like understatement.
Yeah.
Like, it's a bit of an awkward moment, isn't it?
I would like to also read, just for context for anyone who may not know the terms used in this song. The spiders were frightfully angry. Quite apart from the stones, no spider has ever liked being called Addercop, and Tom Noddy, of course, is insulting to anyone.
Like, these are words I've never heard before, but like in this context, they are very insulting words. Yes, Haley.
I know what Addercop means.
Haley's going to tell us the etymology of,
I did look it up once. So adder, in the book, it's A-T-T-E-R. It's cognate with adder, A-D-D-E-R, which is a type of venomous snake. And cop just means head, so he's basically calling them poison head.
Wow.
Which is like an old-timey, like old English term for spiders.
I thought that this was just him making up relative nonsense words. Because it allows Bilbo, in the context of a children's story, to call the spiders a bad name that then kids could turn around and call their brother, and it's not a problem.
It's like actually hilarious.
Like your kid could be in a grocery store and be like, "Well, you know, Billy's being a Tom Noddy," and you're like, everyone's like, "Okay, that's cute." You know,
that's
like
cute.
I think Tom Noddy is like an actual insult.
You could be saying, you know, Billy's being a head, but instead you're saying Tom Noddy,
and
that's just cutesy. Yeah.
Adorable.
So he is distracting the spiders and like drawing them away and being like very playful and very confident in his skills. Love to see this side of Bilbo.
Well, it probably helps that he is, for the first time in a long time, not burdened by 13 struggling dwarves.
Well, I don't know. I would argue he is, because he's trying to save them, you know?
I guess what I mean is he can like move freely, you know? Like he can get something done at his own pace.
So he eventually gets to a point with the spiders where like he's drawn them away enough where he cuts down. I love this moment. So he sees the tip of a hat the tip of a blue hood poking out, and then he sees a nose poking out, and he says, "Oh, that's Feely." And I'm like, good for you, Bilbo, to be able to recognize these dwarves by their nose and the color of their hat when I can't even name all of them.
Well, his eyesight is so good.
That's right. He has those keen Hobbit eyes. So he saves Feely. And Feely's not feeling too good because they've been like poisoned by the spiders. So he's like trying to get his, you know, feelings back and everything. And he helps Bilbo like cut down everyone else and get everyone else out. And they're all still kind of struggling. And then I think this is where I kind of low-key forget exactly what happens, but eventually they get away from the spiders.
It's just like kind of it's like a chaos factory. It's because it
dumpster fire.
Yeah, it's like because he's dropping dwarves. He's trying not to kill them, but it be like as they drop from the tree, it gets more desperate. They're trying to help each other. Like everyone's just like really disoriented and not sure how panicked to be. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, how panicked are we right now? And the spiders are like coming.
Yeah. So, okay, I remember what happens. He had taken his ring off to help cut them down, and then the spiders are all coming back, and then he just says, I'm going to disappear. Like, don't ask questions. I'm going to disappear. Don't worry about it.
I love it.
You guys go that way. I'll draw the spiders away. I think the path should be back in that direction. And then just don't worry about it. We'll talk about it later. And this is where I think I mentioned earlier that like Balin gets like a little bit of a boost in terms of like individual characterization for the dwarves that like they don't really get a lot so far, where it mentions that like Balin's the only one who seemed to like be like, okay, I got you, let's go, you know, I'm on board for this plan, let's do it, whereas everyone else is like, what?
Yeah, usually when the text singles out a single dwarf, it's not in like any kind of a noteworthy way. It's like they're saying some line of dialogue that any of them could be saying, or they're just like doing something that any of them could be doing, or it's like Philly was the youngest, and it's like that doesn't actually help us at all. So it is
that's his
thing, yeah.
Trait.
So it is nice when like any flavor of character comes from any of these dwarves.
Yeah. So Balin and everyone go off in one direction, and Bilbo draws the spiders off in the other. He says, I will do the stinging. Again, so cute.
He's like, I'm gonna brand this,
which is a cutesy word for I'm gonna go slaughter. I'm gonna go murder.
Yeah, well, and like
all of these monsters.
Do you watch Disenchantment at all?
Yeah,
it's like when Elfo snaps and just starts like aggressively stabbing like trolls.
Yes.
And it's like, and then he just like comes out of it and he's like, I don't know what happened back there.
Well, I was like, on the reread, I was a little shocked by like how easily he's murdering these spiders. Like it is no great labor to him to like take one down. It's just like the old stab.
I mean, spiders are at least easy to stab in an area that's impactful. You know,
yeah,
like
just hit him in the belly.
Yeah, it's not like you're having to like make a choice,
or even just like cut off. This is what I've learned from playing Breath of the Wild.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking
encountering
about.
Guardians. Just cut off some of their legs too, and that'll, limit them. Yeah.
I also think that, like, when it says giant spiders, I think we're all kind of used to Sheila, who's, like, the
Aragog.
the size of a she's, like, the size of a Percheron, and I feel like these are more, like, the size of a large dog.
Yeah.
So, like, I could take a spider, like, I don't want to fight a spider that's the size of a large dog, but I could.
God. Haley, I would love to see you try. It would be, I think your approach...
With a weapon. I want a weapon.
I was going to say, not going to do that with my bare hands. I don't want to touch it.
You get Sting. I feel like your approach would be very Hobbit-y.
It's kind of like when you're washing dishes and then like you touch a piece of like the wet food. And you're like, I don't want to touch it.
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay, well, it's time to amputate my hand. I guess I have no other choice.
That's how I would feel. Like, I wouldn't mind fighting the spiders if I had a very long sword that would allow me to not touch it.
Ideally, a javelin.
Or spear would be preferable
of some kind, something with length, you know.
You okay, Christina?
Yeah, the dog couldn't figure out how to open the ajar door. All my stupid pets just sitting at the door like, if only it were opener. And I'm like, I know you don't have thumbs, but you have hands, dude.
Meanwhile, I was sitting on the toilet earlier. When was it? Last night, one does. Actually. And the bathroom, because I'm home alone, the bathroom door was open just a little bit. And my dog just like nudged his way in there and was like, are we playing? And I'm like, I'm trying to pee.
Yeah, what's up? I'll keep you company.
So they all meet up after Bilbo has just slaughtered all of these spiders. And it says, from which you can see that they had changed their opinion of Mr. Baggins very much and had begun to have a great respect for him, as Gandalf had said they would.
Good, because after that whole tree thing...
Yeah, I was ready for them to start respecting him like pretty, I don't know, pretty, like they needed to at least give him some level of respect, you know?
They should have.
Like,
I mean, like, didn't he save them from trolls at one point? I feel like at that point he should have.
He kind of messed that up because he like let them all walk into that one by one into a trap.
Okay, so
whereas he could have been like, "Hey guys, there are trolls here. Don't come this way."
Okay, so as for when the dwarves should have started respecting Bilbo, okay, so imagine you walk into a stranger's home and demand a feast, and they give it to you.
It should have been that. Yeah, it should have been that. Yes. Exactly.
Like, I respect the hell out of that. Not only were you ready, but you were willing, and now we're best friends.
Yeah. So, and so Bilbo decides to tell them the full story of like this ring, because they're like, okay, you disappeared. I think we are owed an explanation of some kind. And so Bilbo tells them the full story now about what happened and finding the ring. And then someone's like, oh, well, tell us the whole part about Gollum and the riddles now that we know that you have the ring. And he's like, okay, fine. So he tells his whole story and everyone's like very impressed. And they're like, that's so cool. All right, time for bed. What an adventure we've had. And then someone wakes up and is like, where's Thorin?
You don't,
the king.
You don't need him.
And this is when I was like, you know what? I was gonna say, because it mentions earlier with the spider, with like everyone being like hung up in their like spider cocoons, and when they're all like regrouping after they've been cut down, it mentions a few times the word dozen. And I've said before that, like, I can't keep track of how many dwarves there are. I thought that there were a dozen. And then in the chapter before this, I learned that there were actually 13. And then this chapter, they kept saying a dozen dwarves. And so I was like, okay, I guess there really are 12. And then they say, where's Thorin?
They definitely need to have, like, a Sound of Music type of, what's it, like, counting off system every time they regroup. They need to go like in order from like oldest to youngest, you know, like everyone say your name.
Lisa, Friedrich, Luisa.
I was just thinking they all need an exit buddy.
Yes. Oh my god. Well, yeah, everyone should absolutely have a buddy.
Yes, like on a field trip too.
Yeah, or like at a music festival in the woods.
Yeah. So they're all like, oh, Shire, we lost Thorin, and he's kind of the most important one of us, even though he's really mean and has
like
done
he's
nothing.
gonna get really mad if we leave him.
But we've already left him behind. Like, we've already forgotten about him. It took us several hours to realize that we didn't have him.
And I circle back to what I said before, just too damn many dwarves. Like, it's just...
There are too many elves as well.
No, just too many dwarves, dude. It's like a nuisance at this point. You should have stopped at like 6, absolute maximum.
Yeah. So then this is when it explains, it's like, so... I bet you're also wondering where Thorin is. Let me tell you.
Now that I pointed out that he's not here.
Also, I love that they're all like, wait, where's Thorin? Well, nothing to do about it now. And then they all go back to sleep.
Like, literally, what are they gonna do?
That is true. There is nothing for them to do in that moment because it's dark. They can't see. They're all tired and hungry. So, like, what are they gonna do? Nothing. They can't do
they
anything.
finally learned not to scramble.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna give them points for that.
Good for
They're
them.
like, you know what?
Yeah.
Let's just stay put for a couple hours.
It took them 3 or 4 tries, but they got there.
God
Yeah.
damn it, they're so annoying.
So the narrator goes into like narration mode, like classic Tolkien, like exposition, like side history, whatever.
Yeah, he has
knowledge.
like he summarizes like the first half of the Silmarillion in one paragraph.
Yeah. So he describes that the people that they had run into earlier at the feast were wood elves. And then he also mentions that they differed from the high elves of the west, and the wood elves are more dangerous and less wise. And then it says light elves and sea elves, which are self-explanatory to me. But then it says the deep elves. What the are deep elves?
Maybe like dwarf living situation.
So the deep elves are the Noldor, I think. So basically there are 3 general types of elves at this point in history. The Noldor are the ones from the west who like came over to Middle-earth after like several thousand years. And like Galadriel is one of them. If you want to think deep elves, like that's who you're thinking of. And then there's the Sindar, who are kind of a mix of the two a little bit, and that's kind of Elrond. Like they're like nerds. They're nerd elves. And then the wood elves are Sylvan elves, and like they've just been through enough. They're done. The Silmarillion is like a bunch of like it's a lot of stuff, but a lot of it is just like elf race wars. And the Sylvan elves are just like they don't want to deal with any more. They want to stay in their one part of this one forest and just have their feasts and have their hunts and like keep spiders off their lawn and
like,
no one bother us. We don't want to talk. Yeah, we've had enough. We don't want to talk to anyone anymore. We're finished.
Yeah. I mean, the important part is that this is the group of elves that never went into the West at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which they're just behind. They're a little behind.
Like they're
I don't know. I think they sound really hardcore, and I love them for it. They sound really
like
cool.
They're like blue collar elves. Like they didn't go to college. They don't need that fancy pants.
Are they kind of like the equivalent of the swamp benders in terms of like the relation?
A little bit.
Totally.
Like, the relation to like the other water tribes.
Like you mentioned earlier that like Legolas is one of these guys. Like the Elven King that comes up is his dad.
And
that is his dad.
Big Daddy Elf Man.
So like they are like the same race of elves as like Elrond, but like culturally
different.
Legolas is a Sylvan elf. Like he's a jock. Like they're all jocks.
Man, then they really got his characterization wrong in the movie.
Yeah,
because he's such a pretty fancy boy in the movie.
I do think that, to defend the movies briefly, I know that's not what we're here for, but I do think part of the role that he ends up playing is that it's other people viewing the only elf in their party.
Yeah,
and,
that's
like,
true too.
Even a jock elf, even a rough around the edges jock elf is going to be more majestic than your most majestic dwarf.
That is true, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys have that one friend who just like is always so graceful and like you've never seen them like trip or like do anything
It's me.
wrong?
I am that friend.
No, it is
I'm
not.
You didn't even let me finish the joke before you called me out on that. But yes, I know what you mean.
Yeah, that's Legolas.
So then, yes, as Haley mentioned a few minutes ago, there's a paragraph that summarizes literally every time so far in this podcast when I have been like, what exactly is this beef between the dwarves and the elves? And then like someone tells me, but like it's a very like long, complicated way that they tell me. And so like I kind of remember bits and pieces of it. And then later on, I've been like, I think it has something to do with the treasure being stolen. And then one person is mad about it and all this stuff.
It's a custody battle over a shiny rock. It was a custody battle over one shiny rock.
Oh, weird.
That's
also how the goblins in Harry Potter feel about their treasure. So weird.
Interesting.
It's almost like she just took a lot of things from Tolkien, put them in a bag, shook them up, pulled them out when she needed a cool idea.
It's like, pulls the name out of a hat. Like, what peril are they going to experience in this book? Spiders and haunted woods.
Perfect.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so this paragraph summarizes everything that I've previously been confused about and or just completely, like, mucked up the explanation for. So, in ancient days, they had had wars with some of the dwarves, whom they accused of stealing their treasure. It is only fair to say that the dwarves gave a different account, and that is kind of like the gist of it. I think that's also the gist of the entirety of history. And so, the Elf King had bargained with them to shape his raw gold and silver, and had afterwards refused to give them their pay. And so, yeah, that's it.
I'd be mad too.
this quarrel that they have is not with Thorin's family. So, like, that's at least good information to have, that, like, eventually, hopefully they'll learn that, like, Thorin's not related. But, like, they're still all racist towards each other. So it's still not a good situation to be in.
Well, and Thorin is like, I'm not even going to mention treasure anyway, though, just in case.
He's like, I'm not going to mention it because they're very, like, greedy, and they love, like, silver and gold and everything, but it mentions that, like, they don't want to do what I know about elves, this checks out, that, like, they don't want to do any of the work that goes into, like, obtaining that treasure, whether it's through, like, trading with other people or, like, mining it and creating it themselves. They don't want, like, any part of the actual effort. They just want it. And I'm like, I mean, I get that.
It's how capitalism was invented.
Yeah, it's like when I wake up and I'm like, I really don't want to go to work, but, like, I kind of need money to survive.
Well, like, they, like, so the thing with the elves is that, like, they used to do a lot of, like, foraging and, like, making cool stuff, and, like, they still do it sometimes, but it has historically not ended super well for them. Like, they'll get really, really good at making something cool, and then they'll get too good, and then they'll end up with, like, a magic
I was just about to say, didn't they forge the rings? It's like, oops, let's not do that again.
That's true. Yeah. You know what? I take it back then. It does kind of check out that they were like, okay, the last time we made treasure, it was these rings and it didn't go well.
It's almost like a King Midas situation. It's like, what if we, like, don't want it to be made of gold? Like, what if we just want regular... We
just want shiny things.
Well, I guess King Midas is a stupid analogy because they do just... Whatever. Just ignore me forever.
So, they have taken Thorin prisoner.
Wait, I have another interjection. It says the elves put... Oh, no, wait, it's not yet. I'm so sorry, it's not yet.
Okay.
I'm spiraling.
We're almost there, so it's okay, Christina. Just hang on.
I already know what you're going to say.
Just hang on for 10 more minutes. Okay. So they take Thorin prisoner and they ask him, like, why did you and your people attack us 3 times? He's like, we didn't attack you. I love that it mentions that all of his answers are related to food because he's so hungry. Yeah. And he says, we didn't attack you. We came to you to beg for food because we're starving. Where are your friends now and what are they doing? I don't know, but I expect starving in the forest. What were you doing in the forest? Looking for food and drink because we were starving.
It's almost like a Harry Potter response, you know, like it's like sassy, but like honest.
Yeah. It's like
Runel Waslip.
But when he is asked about like what brought them into the forest in the first place, he doesn't say anything.
Why not just lie?
I don't know, because he can't think of anything.
Well, I mean, they clearly didn't enter the dark, spooky forest looking for food. Like, that's his only excuse right now. And it's not like, well, this looked like a much more promising place to find something to eat.
And so they take him and put him away.
Okay, wait, my interjection. It says the elves put thongs on him.
Yeah, Okay. So, I know that thong in, like, Australia is like a flip-flop.
It's true.
And I know that thong in the American sense is a very small piece of underwear.
It's a G-string.
But what the heck is it in this context?
That's the thing. Thong means string. Thong means string.
So
like
they
ropes.
just like okay.
They tied him up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was 100% just imagining Thorin in a
G-string.
like a speed, like a banana hammock.
Oh
exactly,
my gosh.
And, like, granted, I have no idea of what he looks like in the movie, so I'm just imagining, like, like a Snow White dwarf wearing a thong.
Oh,
and it's not a good picture. No, it's not a good picture. No.
So he's played by Richard Armitage in the movie. He's a gruff, handsy guy. I don't know what he's in off the top of my head, but he's just a gruff, handsome guy.
Pretty attractive.
So
yeah, he's very dead.
They put him in thongs.
I would say though that if you're like trying to keep someone from escaping, putting them in like a tiny thong and like It's gonna
You don't
prevent
wanna
them
go
taking
running
a
out.
big risk.
Yeah, you're
That's
right.
true. You don't want to
Your
go out in
move.
that. Some of us in this group might not care about that shame.
I'm
but
just gonna sit in this cell and die instead.
In my
Instead of
banana
running
hammock.
through the elf kingdom in naught but a thong.
thong. And like they already don't like dwarves. They already don't like dwarves. So Thorin in that situation would be like, I'm not about to like even further disparage the name of dwarves.
He's just gonna go through and streak the elf hall, like
Just cover himself in olive oil.
It's a power move. Look at this bod.
It is a
Catch
power.
me.
You know what? It is a power move.
This is what mining does for your abs.
Okay. So they take him and put him away, but it mentions that the elves were not goblins and they were reasonably well behaved to even their worst enemies. So they actually end up giving him some really good food and drink. And even though he's being held prisoner, he's also at least not like in the middle of a forest after escaping a horde of spiders. So like it says there in the king's dungeon, poor Thorin lay. And I'm like, poor Thorin. It sounds like he's way better off than everyone else who is lying in the middle of a dark forest, has no idea where they are. They're all starving and thirsty, and they've all just been poisoned by spiders.
Yeah, and
I think he has the better end of the deal right now.
Yeah, and it seems like Thorin may or may not have like some of the understanding that we've gained through the narrative about like how the elves are like generally harmless. They're just like afraid of strange, whereas like the other dwarves are like in the woods just like, what's happening, these people are scary, like I don't know what's going on. Thorin seems pretty chill right now. He's like, I'm safe, like they're not gonna like execute me at sunrise or whatever. So I definitely would rather be in Thorin's shoes right now.
Yeah, exactly. And that is the end of the chapter.
Wow.
A lot happened in that chapter.
did.
I know we talk a lot, but honestly it was like a couple like different sets of stories within the same chapter.
Yeah. It's so funny
Very
because
enjoyable.
the chapter ends with like just more narrative flair, that like they're talking about what's going on with his friends. It was not very long before he discovered, but that belongs to the next chapter and the beginning of another adventure in which the Hobbit again showed his usefulness.
I love this narrator getting more and more playful. And maybe, again, just like going, back to what Tolkien later decided was the narrative structure of The Hobbit, where like this is Bilbo writing it. It does kind of track that like as Bilbo in the events of this chapter gains more confidence, Bilbo the narrator is also gaining more like confidence to be more like playful and witty.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that is the end of a chapter episode that I will probably be splitting into 2 parts.
Wow. Amazing.
I was promised a
is-
short one this time.
I know. I did say that like it was. Well, no, I did say it wasn't. It wasn't going to be the length of Fellowship of the Ring.
Okay, so it was.
And I was right.
It was definitely less than that.
I was correct. So, thank you guys so much for coming on. What would you like to share with our audience? I don't know. Someone go first.
I'll go first. My name's Christina Kahn. You can follow me on Instagram at Your Girl of the World. You can follow me on Twitter at Christina Kahn. You can follow me on TikTok at Sprouts Private Stash. Check out my podcast, The Restricted Section, over on the Movie Night Crew Network. You'll find Haley, Brooke, and Mary Clay there all the time. And I also just would love to plug like a TV show that I just love so much. And okay. The show is a Netflix original called Hilda. And it's about this, like, it's a cartoon about this little girl who lives in, like, some magical woods. And so it has similar vibes. Much less scary, generally, but a lot of just, like, woodland magical adventures. And I love it. So that's what I got.
Very cute.
I'm Haley. I am also on the Restricted Section and the Movie Night Crew network in general. You can follow me on Twitter if you must at the Ritterwit. And that's kind of all I got. I'll second Hilda. It's a fun show.
I've been Brooke Matherly. I can be found on Instagram at Passion for Parks and Twitter at Grumpy Brooke. Obviously also on the Restricted Section. I just want to really heavily plug, if you like chaos, the other podcast that we're on, which is Movie Night Crew, is pure chaos. It's super enjoyable chaos. We literally just watch movies and then we talk about them. It's short, and it's beautiful, and it's friendship.
Oh, what a beautiful summary.
I mean, it's friendship in the sense that it's all of us shouting at each other.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, that's what...
Yeah, friendship.
That's the only friendship that I've ever known.
it's more of a Thorin Bilbo style friendship.
That's What I'm Talking About is a proud member of WBNE. You can go to WBNE.org where you will find all of our shows like Bacon and Eggs, which, side note, congratulations, Tyler, on the birth of your child, your second child, Finn. Welcome to the world, Finn. And also a belated welcome to the world for the Winter's baby, Felix. That's right, guys. We have not one, but 2 new members of the WBNE family. Isn't that so amazing? So make sure to go to social media and flood Tyler and Emily, as well as Valerie and Casey, with lots of heart emojis and crying faces because of the preciousness of their beautiful humans. Anyway, here's a promo for Bacon and Eggs, which is unrelated to the beautiful humans.
Howdy, yokes. I'm Tyler Carlin.
And I'm Ethan Edgehill.
And we host Bacon and Eggs, a movie lovers podcast.
It's the most roll your eyes, I've seen it before concept for a show.
But with new hosts, I promise. Each week, we sit down together and watch a beloved movie.
We start by looking at some critical and concrete points and let our conversation flow from there.
We've covered all sorts of movies, from Jaws to Little Women.
From the Lego Movie to the Lego Movie 2.
From Marvel to Star Wars.
From Back to the Future to Back to the Future Part 2.
And tangents from our frustrations with fast food
to discussing our fear of the mighty loon.
So if you want a podcast that makes you laugh,
download Bacon and Eggs, a movie lovers podcast.
With new episodes available every Thursday, wherever you get your podcasts, and now on WBNE.org.
Ghostbusters 2!
My hope and dream was that you would say that.
The cover art is by Graphite, aka Vaishon Brandon. You can support him on Instagram at graphite.vmb. You can get merch for That's What I'm Talking About by going to tpublic.com/user/talkingaboutpod or following the link in the episode description. You can find the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at TalkinAboutPod, as well as join the Facebook group, which is linked in the description. You can find me on Twitter at MCWhat'sUp and Instagram at MCTurnDownForWhat. You can support the podcast by becoming a patron. Go to patreon.com/talkingaboutpod, where you can find all of the different tiers and perks. For $15 a month, you get not only access to the WBNE general Discord server and the Talkin' About threads, but you get complete access to all of the threads for all of the shows. How many shows do we have now? Like 6, 7, 20? I don't know. I've lost count. But we have a lot of awesome discussion threads in the whole Discord server that if you are just a $3 patron for Tolkien About, you don't get access to the other shows. But you can get complete and total access to the whole Discord server by becoming a $15 a month patron, or you can become a sponsor like Brendan. Brendan is a new patron for That's What I'm Talking About. Thank you so much, Brendan, for your support. This is amazing and wonderful, and I appreciate it very much. All right, all that being said, who wants to fight for parting words? Fight to the death.
Oh my god, we're all so polite.
Okay.
Feel my vicious sting. Was that good?
Yes, that was I like Haley's. Fine, Haley, do you have something better?
No.
I'll do the stinging.
Oh, so cute. And that's what I'm talking about.